So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that film. It was quite long. It took you into the First World War. Now we're going to meet with the cinematographer who won a BAFTA for Rillington Place in 2017. He got a Camera Image Award for Patrick Melrose, which was directed by Ed Berger, the same director. He was the co-author of the BSC book, Preserving the Vision, with myself. And he's just been listed, along with the director and the leading actor, on the BAFTA long list for nominations this year. He's currently shooting The Acolyte, which is an episode of Star Wars. So let's please welcome James Friend, ASC BSC. James. So he's got a hand mic. I hope you can hear me, guys. Yeah, am I all going to the back there? What an amazing achievement, I have to say. I mean, it must have been hair-raising to actually put this film together with the action and all the explosions and all that sort of stuff. And so let's start. First of all, tell me, how did you started as a gaffer electrician, am I right?
Yeah, very much so. But before I start, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone for turning up this evening. I know it's a Saturday or Friday. I don't know. I'm shooting, so I'm a bit lost. But thank you very much for everyone for turning up. It means a lot. But yes, I left school at 16 and with the ambition of being a cinematographer, and didn't know anyone in the business. Didn't know even how.
None of us did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How even to get started. Wrote many letters to the BBC. And to be perfectly honest, didn't get a single reply back. And
yes.
Also applied to the NFTS and got declined on multiple occasions.
Got declined? Outrageous.
So yeah, I started as I left school and I spoke to someone in the electrical department who sort of said, if you want to be a cinematographer, you need to learn to light. I thought, what, light? What is that? Is that something that a cinematographer does? You know, I understood all the sort of illusions of cinematography, but not really. And yeah, I joined the electrical department. And when you sort of set a lamp and the gaffer said, "I'll go over there, pan it left a bit or right a bit or whatever, and spot it or flood it or whatever, and put this filter in front of it." You know, I was the guy, the annoying guy, who used to run from the lamp and stood next to the sort of camera position behind the operator or the DP and see what effect it did. So I kind of learnt that way, I suppose, and yeah, and ultimately until I had the audacity to sort of say, well, I want to go lighting, and I did at a young age. Far too young, to be perfectly honest, because I really didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yes.
But it was, it was still in the days of film where I think that the discipline still carries over of sort of shooting film and into, or celluloid into digital. And yeah, I kind of, my first job, I was literally coiling cable through, in East London, through sort of water that had sort of hypodermic needles and sort of all sorts of.
So how did you get your photographic skills?
Well, just watching other cinematographers and learning from gaffers, and then and I was on a picture where I was gaffing, so to speak, but not really. I mean, it was a terrible budget, like it's never even made it to DVD, that kind of thing. But the cameraman left, and whilst there was an intermediate spot open until they found a replacement. So I was forced. I didn't even nominate myself. I was forced to fill that void.
Yes.
And then the director sort of said, "Well, we've only got 4 weeks left or whatever, 3 weeks left. You continue doing it," and I did. And that was my first sort of feature credit. And then I think it's not a feature; it's a feature length credit. You can turn over on an iPhone for 90 minutes and call it a feature film, but that might as well what that would have been. But we had a Luton van with a couple of HMIs and a couple of Kinos, and I sort of learnt my craft doing it that way, you know, running
Did
around.
you do any formal learning of cinematography?
I went to...
when the NFTS turned you down, but did you
no, I went
go another route?
Well, I went back to the NFTS and I did all their short courses, actually, which was sort of equally as sort of beneficial, fruitful, because, you know, there were very sort of high concentrated sort of periods of time, and then I went to the London Film School, and they tried to, sorry if I'm offending anyone, but they tried to sort of compete with the NFTS by running a course that was concentrated on cinematography, but I think it was quite expensive for whoever was funding it, because it was all government run, so they cancelled it. But we ended up with this. I think it ran for a couple of years, and we had these fantastic teachers, people like Paul Wheeler, and I think Seamus McGarvey came in and did a few sort of masterclasses, and it was brilliant. But to be perfectly honest, you know, really doing it yourself and being thrown in the shit end was kind of the way to learn. I must say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it all about film with London Film School, or was it?
Yeah, it was. I think digital started to sort of come in, but yeah, it was mainly focused on film. I mean, my first couple of projects were definitely celluloid, and you know, the lab and
There's a lot to be said for shooting film, I think.
most certainly, yeah.
I mean, Brian Tofano at the NFTS famously said, if you can shoot film, you can shoot anything. And I think, because if you understand the mechanics of film and the emotion and the exposure and all of those things, yeah.
Well, I was actually talking to someone the other day, and we were referring about a dense negative, and I kind of still see digital the same way. Like, you have to, if you have control of the grade and the final DI and the process, if you deliver a good dense digital neg, then you open up a sort of myriad of possibilities in post-production, and it's only improving on a day-by-day basis. But yes, you're totally right. Yeah.
And do you miss film? I mean, would you like to shoot film again? Or?
I must admit, I do. I miss the majesty of film. I miss the sort of I do miss film. However, I genuinely would say, on this production, we had this deal with the producers where we finished the movie, and we went back to film, and then we scanned back off the neg, and it came back with all the kind of grain and all the artifacts of film, to the point where if you kind of put the two next to each other, I really couldn't tell the difference if it was shot on film or on digital. But the one thing that you have to remember is that you've got the latitude of all the digital cameras, and not that film doesn't have the latitude, but you've got the sensitivity of the digital cameras. So you can work at these obscene ISOs, which we never had with, even when I started, let alone when, with all due respect, you started. So, you know, and 50 ASA, exactly, stuff that we wouldn't even bloody dream about these days. And but however, you can go back to film and come back off, and it has that grain, it has that sort of dark art that you can't, because so many times I'm sure many of the people in this room have also done a film grain sort of look over the top, which is supposed to emulate, but there's something about the photochemical process which is really bloody hard to emulate, and then you, as a crafts person, you have to sort of divorce yourself from the crafts, you know, the artist or whatever, and then the audience. And you know, if it costs $100,000 to go that way, back onto film and back off again, how much of the audience are actually going to really appreciate that? But I must admit, when we did it, we all looked at it and thought, "Wow, that is amazing." But we couldn't get the studio to sign off on it until we got into a major film festival. And then we did get into a major film festival, and they didn't pay for it. But so somewhere out there might be a cinematographer's print in 20 years' time, or maybe.
So you didn't convert it to
no,
film neg until you got this film festival offer.
Yeah, exactly. But I've got it on my iPad, and that's about it. That's about it, and it looks cool. It looks very cool. But I'd love to do it. I'd love to have enough weight behind me on the next one to sort of
Oh, it'll happen. Yeah. Did Netflix have many parameters about how you should shoot?
They were. I must admit that Netflix, considering they're a studio, but they're an IT company at the end of the day. They were unbelievable, actually. I've worked with many of the big sort of Hollywood studio systems recently, and Netflix were, what do you want to do, and how can we service it? And we said we want to shoot 235, and they said, yeah, great, or 239, yeah, great. Why? They did ask why, and I wrote a 3-line email, and they said, yeah, great. And there was no. I was expecting a lot more of a sort of tennis match, backwards and forwards, but there wasn't. They were very respectful to the artistic sort of. I hate to say this, but the artistic vision of it all. Do you know what I mean?
Making your legs. Yeah. So, had you read the book at all?
Very much so. I studied. This is one of those wonderful things. It's like I studied a couple of books at school, like Of Mice and Men, and and this was one of the pieces of literature that we studied that sort of, went over sort of history and literature, and so it was really kind of drummed into us. So when Ed said, do you want to do this? I was like, wow, this is quite a big fucking responsibility. As a piece of, also as a filmmaker, because it's been done twice before, even though the first one was 90 years ago or 100 years
1930.
ago. 1930. The other one was 1970. So and but they were both done in the English language, and you can understand why, but now audiences and the whole industry's changed, and the whole the whole.
There's more of an audience in the rest of Europe.
No, very much.
Than there is,
Of course, yeah. So
I'm sure the pandemic changed a lot of that in terms of people switching onto Netflix.
But also, if you're going to try and stay as faithful and authentic as to a source material, German is the way to go with it. It was terrifying to as a sort of cinematographer and a filmmaker to try and even comprehend filling those boots, but we kind of did it because we didn't have.
But the script it's not exactly original, is it? Because it's based on the book, but in fact it was a new script. It wasn't based on any previous script.
Oh god, yeah. Oh no, it was definitely not based on the previous script. It was based on the book.
Yeah.
And it was that interpretation of the book, and also I first-hand witnessed the script change, literally like in the room, and new characters be invented, and things like that. So it was quite a rarefied air for a DP. Also, normally you get emailed these things and you have to read them, and but I saw it evolve, and it was.
But you had a very close relationship with Ed Berger.
Yeah, very much
in terms of scripting and the planning.
Yeah. We had done a couple of pictures beforehand, and we formed a very tight relationship and a really strong kind of collaborative sort of force between us, and trust. I think trust is the main thing between the director and the cinematographer. But because of COVID, we were literally locked in a hotel room. They flew me out to Berlin, and they didn't know if I could actually be there or not. If I needed some kind of work visa because of the duration I was out there for, and purely because of COVID. And they put me in this lovely sort of suite, which obviously the walls started just to close in. Like, it could have been the size of this room, but it just got smaller and smaller every day. And Ed would turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 7 o'clock at night. And we would go through the entire script, and we would shot list and plan and storyboard. And weirdly, like, I'm seeing one picture in my head and he's seeing another picture in his head, and who knows if it was going to come out the way we wanted it, but it kind of did. And I'd never worked that way. I was always a very sort of organic filmmaker, where you would see a blocking in a room, and you would say, you would normally say, well, I think the wide should be from here because of the geography and the layout of the room. The windows may be over there, and the doorway may be over there, or whatever. And this is the sort of influence that we should the cinematographer should have on the scene. But everything, he's very methodical. And we kind of figured it all out on paper. And it was one of the scariest moments of my career because I didn't know if what I was saying was going to work, like genuinely going to work. That first shot where we came out the trench and we ran across the battlefield, I didn't know if that was going to bloody work. And we had a window of about 4 hours, or 3.5 hours to shoot it before the sun came round, and we just started getting camera shadows. And that's before it started looking crap, lighting-wise. So, I didn't know if it was possible. Especially, it's one thing if you've got all the time and the money in the world, but we didn't. It looks like a big-budget movie, but it really wasn't. I mean, it was actually quite tiny for what we had. And,
You rehearsed that shot, though, didn't
you? We had the stabilise technician for half a day before. And we had the Technicrane for a third of a day before because we had to ship it into Prague. They didn't have one there. We had to get it into the battlefield. And by the time you line everything up and you get everyone all ready to go.
Have you gone?
Blue Peter. It's fantastic. It's one I put out earlier. It was... we rehearsed it, but we didn't have a lot of rehearsal. But one thing about that shot and those sequences...
Yeah, talk through the mechanics.
Yeah, is for every time you said cut and go again, and it could be anything from a buzz in focus to, an actor falling over or whatever, which literally happened all the time, or a mistime of a special effects explosion or something like that. And I'm not talking about the deep ones. I'm talking about the ones that are sort of really interacting with the actors. So there was this sort of plethora of things that could have gone wrong, and I'm kind of half my brain's thinking about that, and the other half is thinking about the sun coming round, and it looking worse and worse and worse. So we rehearsed it, and to be perfectly honest, we cocked up 13 takes, and we got it right on the 15th. Well, the 15th take was the one we went, we can live with that one, and then 16th take was rubbish, and then the 17th take was fantastic, and then you've got the the VFX supervisor in your ear kind of going, well, I might be able to blend these two somehow. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because the light's completely different. And
so this is the stabiliser coming out of the trench?
This
being hooked onto the
crane
and then taken up over the top.
Yeah, so the opening shot on the battlefield is this big aerial shot that goes down that sort of does that and goes towards the trench, and that was supposed to be on a 75-foot Technicrane, but we couldn't get a 75-foot in and out in time because we had to look the other way. We had to look that way in the afternoon, and the grips were like, we're not going to get this out of this bloody quagmire of a battlefield. So we had to go on our run of show, which was a 50-foot Technicrane, but that meant getting a different head in, getting the 65mm camera out, and putting the 18mm lens on it just to get that shot, that field of view. And I was unhappy with the distortion of that shot. So that was not intentional. That was something that ended up in the film because that was what I had to live with. But no one said anything about it. So I'm like, well, okay, well, it's fine. That was sort of one of those battles that you have to sort of fight. And then we cut into the trenches where we're running through with the Stabilise, and Matthew Budd, our grip, who was running with it, single man, and he got to the point where the chap goes up the ladder, and then a Technicrane would boom down, the biggest waste of a 50-foot Technicrane I've ever seen in my entire life, because it went down about 7 foot. And then he hooked it on and then was taken back off again, and then 2 other grips unhooked it and then ran with it. And the only reason it was a 50-foot Technicrane is because that was the one that was on the Scarab base that was just lived on it. So you could have done it with a jib arm, really. And yeah, it was
handy.
It was very handy. I'm not complaining at all, but coming from someone from a sort of lower budget TV drama sort of schedule, it was unnatural for me to have these tools at my disposal, but also having a bit of guilt that you've kind of got these things at your disposal and you're not using them to the fullest of their extent, because normally I'm used to a production manager screaming at me going, what are you bloody doing, but yeah, it was, but when we did it, it was actually, we wrapped early on that day, and that was like the third day of filming, and we shouldn't have wrapped early, but everyone went home and just had a stiff drink because we had so much stress.
Yes.
And the other thing is, my stabiliser technician only arrived in the country the day before, so I didn't know if this fucking thing was going to work or not. And I've got, literally, as far as I'm concerned, my reputation on the line, because I'm like, well, I've said this is going to work. They're flying these people in through COVID and blah 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 blah. And I'm just glad it did. Thank God. Yeah.
So finding that location for the major battle sequence, that must have been quite difficult.
Yeah, it was absolutely instrumental. I mean, instrumental, because we were there for half of the film. So the director was like, I've seen this location, it's fantastic, the background is great. And I'm like, the background? What are you talking about, the background? And I turn up there and it's on a hill, a 40-degree angle. I'm like, we can't shoot on this. Like, if it's mud, we're going to be sliding down it. And he's like, no, yeah, but it'll be authentic. We'll just put the camera on our shoulder and run. And Ed is a lot more intuitive than that. Like, I think finally he would have seen sense. But we found this place called Milovice, which is about 30 minutes outside Prague, and it is laser level flat because it's an old Soviet airbase. So there was a runway, and then this huge plot of land in between, which was just flat. And I've never done my sort of due diligence into this, but I can only presume that it's built east to west or west to east for aviation purposes and sun and all sorts of stuff. But it meant that if you stood in the middle of the battlefield, where we built the French trench at one end, the sun would rise and then it would set behind the German trench. So we had this almost the closest to a kind of day exterior studio situation, only for the sun, of course, you could possibly fathom, with two runways either side where you could put machines and cranes for any control of smoke or light or whatever. So you could put cherry pickers and all sorts of jazz, and it worked, and it worked, and the whole set is a 3-walled set. So even though it looks like we pan all over the bloody place and blah 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 blah, we only shoot the east, the west, and the south side. The north side, if you were to actually pan the camera 10 degrees that way, you would see artist trailers, catering tents, all sorts of stuff that will break the fourth wall. But yeah, it was a 3-walled set, because the second I panned north, photographically it would be incorrect. So there were times when I was running with a camera or tracking with a camera, and to get as much distance from one end of the set to the other, we were literally like here, and there's an artist trailer here, and the rail is running that way, and we're tracking going that way, and I'm literally getting bounce off of a honey wagon or a I mean, I'm not even joking, like a portaloo, but just to get as much distance from the back wall of the set as humanly possible, so we've got extras running across and things like that. So it was quite rudimentary. It really was. But it was one of those ones where kind of prep, at least for me in my head, prep was everything. And also proving that it works. Your thought process can work across a very long extended schedule.
And then the sun goes down, and it's a completely different story.
Completely bloody different story. Yeah.
So how did you deal? Because they were using flares and stuff like that. And,
So the battlefield was 10 football pitches worth of area. And to be perfectly honest, I just didn't know how to even start to light that to look natural, to look good, to look to serve the story. So the one thing that I did know how to do was just implement the use of atmospheric smoke, because you backlight smoke and you suddenly have a third dimension immediately. So on each corner of these runways, I had a couple of 18s, which basically looked like dado lights, for anyone that remembers those, just as far back as humanly possible. backlighting the smoke, and I got the special effects department to ring the set, and we would turn on A, B, or C, or D side, or whatever, and that would give us our sort of separation. And then we had this softbox over the top that had about 100 sky panels in, which also did nothing, and I mean nothing. But because I'm a soft lighter and I wanted as much soft ambient light and as naturalistic light as possible, we put magic cloth over it, which obviously knocks the crap out of it. So yeah, that was our kind of ambient fill. And then we had one of the first orbiter lights. Do you guys know the orbiter, the ARRI orbiter?
No, tell us about the orbiter.
So it's an LED lamp that ARRI make that essentially is, you can change the frontage of it, so it's got lenses on it basically, but it's just a very high powered LED
lamp.
Like
a spotlight.
Yeah, it's like the sort of thing that's doing this. It can do that, or it can do whatever. But it's got this fantastic thing on the side, which is it's got a sensor that can read light. So it can read frequency of light, color, temperature, intensity, all sorts of wonderful things. And I went onto the battlefield and I turned everything off, and we fired a flare up in the air and turned the sensor of this orbiter. Consider it was a bloody prototype. I didn't even know if this was going to work. This sort of came to me sort of in the car on the way to work, and the sensor is so good. It read the intensity and all the information of this lamp, of this flare, and it recorded it back to some kind of signal onto the lighting desk, which enabled us to turn that information into to put through the sky panel softbox rig. So if we're looking one way and we have a flare fired up in the air, the audience are seeing this flare. And then when we do a returning and answering shot back on the actors, because I may want a controllable lamp, as we would all want, for dialogue and for every reason, because flares, you fire one way, they go that way, and then suddenly you fire them another way and they go that way, and they go out and all this sorts of stuff. Completely uncontrollable. So we had this softbox rig that we suddenly could control a flare effect on the actors, but we could then say, if we need 10 more seconds because so-and-so's delivering his lines at a different pace, or or just whatever, we could control it, and it would, on the cut, it would be sort of relatively, to my eye, seamless. But there is actually a few shots in the film which I rarely sort of speak about, but I did a camera test where I turned all the lamps off on the set and filled it full of smoke, and we fired the flare-ups in the air, and it was all yellow orange light, and then when we look back on the actors, it's all blue, and that's basically because the camera tests, the director and the editor loved them so much, they ended up putting them in the film, which is something which I completely naively, it just would never think. They put your camera test as a cut in the film. As a cut in the film, and it goosed me in the grade completely. Yeah, because I couldn't swing the colour either way. So, but no one's ever brought it up. But it shows you that's a lesson that I learned. So this machine, this orbiter, I mean, you can actually control all the other lights by what it's recorded in terms of what it sees on the sensor. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit remarkable. It was a bit beyond me, to be perfectly honest. But it could control the colour. I mean, if you think about a flare that might burn brighter and whiter and then darker and more orange, records all of that information. But then when you can fire it back to a softbox that's got 100 lamps in it. So sorry, I'm being nerdy now. But when it goes, so once you've pointed this orbiter at the flare, the information goes to a hard drive or something. No, it goes back to our lighting desk, which is a sort of, and you can then PC on. You can then plug that into every other lamp that's in that desk. Yeah. I mean, it goes via a lighting desk operator who's Yes. They're far more intelligent than I am. I mean, I can barely use a mobile phone, let alone. Me, actually. I mean, it's quite amazing that a piece of equipment can actually do that. Yeah. Well, I didn't know it existed until I tell you what it was. I was driving to set in the back of a car one day, and I was looking at YouTube videos of orbiters because it had just pinged up on my iPhone, and I clicked on it, and I thought, oh, this looks fun. And it just so happened I was basically going to the set, and I thought, well, how can we use modern day technology to sort of improve our what we do. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. But actually, it made it on the screen, and I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Now, you said in an interview that you were interested in what Mitch Dubin and Chris Harhoff said about filming Saving Private Ryan. What did you learn from that?
Well, you were actually moderating
that, yes.
moderating it, and I was sat in the audience. What fascinated myself and Danny Bishop, who's an absolutely stellar operator.
Sadly couldn't be with us today.
Couldn't be with us
He's
today.
working abroad.
Yeah, he's stuck in France. So, but he sends his love, and he genuinely does. But basically, Mitch Dubin and Chris Harhoff and Spielberg and Kaminski, they all entered Saving Private Ryan with all these sort of grandeur ideas. And it became pretty apparent in the first morning of day one of principal photography of the landing on the beach scene that they needed to sort of abandon Technicranes, abandon Steadicam, abandon sort of reason to a certain degree, and just sort of stick it on the shoulder and kind of go with it. And that obviously had its certain language and its freedom. And that's kind of we kind of augmented that a little bit, because they were sort of 3 cameras most of the time, like picking up vignettes and this and this and this. Very different style
Chris
of film.
was actually Steadicam, in fact.
He was Steadicam.
So he didn't ditch it.
No, he didn't ditch it, but he was the B camera on it, I believe. So
he was, yeah.
So he also was as handheld as he was Steadicam. But we adopted this approach where for a war film, on paper you look at things and you go, I need 4 cameras on a daily basis, because shit's going off behind me, it's blowing off, and you want to capture it. You want that kind of, that you want that sort of sensibility. But actually, what we did is the complete opposite. We treated that as a sort of moving wallpaper aspect, where the background was what it was, and we would just have one camera that would follow the action. But we tried everything. We tried tracking vehicles, we tried all sorts of really, really, really fancy bits of kit that would have cost a lot of money. And actually we found that the best results always came from the sort of lower fi aspect of doing things, even with the Stabilize, which is a wonderful bit of kit, but it's a souped up Ronin, as we all sort of know. But we had tracking vehicles and stabilising arms and all this kind of stuff. And our Stabilize tech just turned around and said, "Well, have you tried running with it?" And we were like, "No, we haven't." And it was like, get rid of all of that.
Maybe just holding it.
Yeah, just holding it.
Without looking through it.
Yeah, just running with it. Or if you're going to sit on the back of a tracking vehicle because you've got to do 15 takes, just sit on the back but hold it. And we did. And we got the best shots through just a lower fi way of working. And we kind of all embraced that, and that's that for me was what was great about it. Really. Yeah, I learned a lot. Yeah.
Did you consider wire cam in any way?
Oh God, we had a 4-tower wire cam thing which would have cost $500,000 to install, and about another $2 million to remove in post, because it would have had to live there for the entire picture. And we Danny and I went to Berlin to test it, and we said, stop there, and I'm on the wheels, and I'm saying to the guy, stop there, and it went like that. And I thought, oh God, we can't have that. Oh God. And so we tried a simple tracking shot, and I thought, no, can't do that. And it would have been the easiest way off the job.
They use this for American football.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been perfect for. There's very few drone shots in the film, as you can see. But sorry, we need to finish. So, but yeah, we just went through just doing lo-fi, low.
So just winding up this end of the thing. What cameras and lenses did you choose? Just get to the basic facts.
So I did a couple of series before on the LFs and the Venices and all this kind of stuff, and I pitched it to Ed, who the last thing we did was on 35, and I said, have you tried large format? And we both like lenses, we both like wide field of vision, so we I showed it to him and he loved it, and I said, well, we can actually go one up on the 65, and this is sort of my naivety to a certain degree. And I shot this material. I flew back to London, shot it, and we went back to Prague and we screened it. He loved it, but it became very apparently obvious that it wasn't ergonomically appropriate to run across a battlefield with, but also because of the large sensor size, obviously it forces you to go a wee bit more telephoto in order to get the shot required, which has panning speed problems and focal length problems, especially if you do a night shot or something like that. So it was a real myriad of formats. So there are scenes like I don't know if you guys remember when Paul Baumer gets his uniform at the very beginning. I really wanted to do that on the 65 because it was at the more classic, static kind of grammar of filmmaking, and also do you remember the dinner table scene with General Friedrichs and Brixdorf, where they're sat there, big long table, all sort of lit by candlelight, and we had a lighting balloon made for that because the ceiling was listed and we couldn't rig anything, so we had to have something made, which obviously in Prague is much cheaper, which is brilliant because we could do all these things that we couldn't normally do. But yeah, all those scenes I approach very much 65. Even Kaczynski, his death, where he gets shot by the boy, that was all shot on 65. All the stuff running through the battlefield, I found the visual language and the grammar of an LF sensor on slightly wider glass was a lot more pleasing because you're not on that super telephoto lens. You're still within that same language, and yeah, it worked. But we landed on the DNAs, the ARRI DNAs, and I bought a set of Tribe 7s, the Blackwings, and they're about a stop and a bit faster than the DNA. So I ended up carrying those on the back of the truck simply just to sort of get out of jail card. And yeah, I went to a masterclass with Lawrence Sher, the DP, who did the Joker, and I saw his lens list of all these things that he shot the Joker on, and they were like CP2s, CP3s, this Nikon, Canon, blah blah blah, and I kind of thought, wow, well, that was, I watched that film and it was seamless, and this, and I'm no Lawrence Sher, but we shot this on the Venice for night exteriors, we shot this on the 65 for certain scenes, we shot this on the LF for certain scenes, the VFX work we did on the Red, mainly because we couldn't afford one and I owned one, so I kept one on the back of the truck and we did stuff, as a sort of splintery unit. And then this sort of myriad of lenses. And I was sat in the DI in Prague 6 months later, and I was like, I can't remember if that was shot on the 65 or if that was on the LF or what lens that was on. People ask me these questions, which is great. I mean, it really is. I encourage it. But it kind of goes to show that, it was all spherical. It wasn't anamorphic. But I can't tell, so no. I hope that no one else can.
What about second unit?
We didn't really have one. We had a lovely guy called Mark Rimmer, who was my B camera operator, who's a cinematographer in his own right. But what he would do is, because we were a single camera setup, I would line something up with Danny, then I would go and line something up with Mark, and then because of the nature of how long things would take to set up again and reload, we would go from one shot to the next shot, and then we would bounce between the two. But we didn't have a second unit.
So you really shot the whole film
I was
yourself.
the second unit.
Yeah.
In fact, actually what we would do is we would stagger the calls. So main unit would start, and then second unit would go 2 hours later.
But
and
you would be at both units?
I'd be on both units. So I would go back, I would have a shower and collapse, yeah. Many times just woke up in a towel with my alarm going, what day is it? And,
Gosh.
Yeah.
Monumental stuff, I have to say. Monumental stuff. And pleased that it's now on the long list for BAFTA for Best Cinematography, as well as Direction, Best Film, Best Actor. Questions from the audience? Anybody like a question? Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, Alexa 65.
It's just so that everyone can hear you.
Alexa 65, Alexa 35. But what do you actually use for your actually 35mm camera?
So
ARRI 735 or something?
It wasn't Alexa 35, it was the Alexa LF Mini.
Yeah.
Which is it's bigger format than 35.
Yeah, but that's digital, isn't it?
Yeah, digital, yeah. And the Alexa 65.
Right.
Digital,
yeah, it was all digital, yeah. So sorry, what was the question?
For the grain, how did you get the grain? Was it post-production? How did you?
No, that was my dream, was to basically go back to film, which we did, but you guys would never have seen it, because as I say, it's just on my iPad. My daughter's seen it more than I have. But
it's a scan.
But yeah, it's basically
a scan onto film stock.
Well, no, that's
Okay.
what we were going to do. There wasn't actually really any grain added. It was just
from the scan stock.
no, we didn't. We actually didn't add any in the end. It's all pretty clean.
So where does the grain come from?
It doesn't.
That's my question.
That's his question.
There is no grain.
Well,
I
you said
saw
you
it.
mentioned
I
the
saw
grain earlier.
No. That was what I wished to do.
Ah,
there was
okay.
no grain. There was
no
There
grain.
actually
I could
was
have sworn I saw grain up there, but well,
digital
funny,
noise,
then.
unfortunately.
Well, there are
okay.
other things you can see on the screen. You can see the xenon lamp, actually, and bright spots as well.
Okay.
So you see, there are other things you do see on screens that are not
Right,
grain. But,
artifacts.
yeah.
Yeah.
But well done. It's a masterpiece,
Thank you.
and a lot of it is down to your skills.
Very much so, yeah. Another question? Yes? You're in the dark, so I can't quite see you, but the microphone's running towards you. That's better.
Ashley
You look better
Barron.
now.
Ashley Barron back there. ACS.
Yes.
G'day. I'm going to do 1.5 questions. So talking about lenses, the scene where the two guys are on the toilet, the lenses on that, and it almost felt like they tried to pull rack focus back and they couldn't. I feel like there's something there, so I'd love to know about that. And secondly, can you talk about what you actually did in the DI? Like, what, if there's anything that you did in the grading suite that informed the way it looks?
That's a good question. Yeah, that was the 65 and the lenses struggling at close focus because we were wide and in. And you're totally right. That was basically just which eyelash do you want sharp, and on the next take, this is me being completely brutally honest because this is what these things are all about. On the next take, I went lose the ND and close down a stop, and then they used the take that we didn't want them to use. So yeah, that was simply just the lenses and the mechanics and the opticals.
Do you remember which one?
That was on the Tribes. And that was on like a 37mm and in on the 65. So and then certain close up. Yeah, that was sort of a lot of that was all single camera actually, that scene. But yeah, that was me using it irresponsibly for the first time. To be perfectly honest,
if you're all learning here, it's all about performance. The director will take the best performance. He'll take the thing that does what he wants. There's a shot in one of my films, The Mask of Zorro, where the actress stepped over her mark. Everybody knew she'd done it, and we all said NG. And when the director was cutting the film together, he didn't like the takes he got, and he said, "Are there any more?" And the editor said, "Well, there's another 6 before that." He said, "Let's print them all up." And he chose the one where she'd stepped over the mark, and I mentioned it to him, and he said, "Hard luck." And that's how the director takes it. So unfortunately, you're at their mercy of the story and the finished product.
And also that scene, if you actually really look at it again, and I can't watch that film again, so I hope you guys don't. But the sun's in and out like a bloody yo-yo.
No, you don't notice.
Yeah,
that.
so and
it's
and
extremely well done.
That was a lot of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another question.
Just turn over.
Another question. Okay, if not, we have a little small reception outside in the lobby. So first of all, thank you very much to James Fred, ASC BSC, for talking to us this evening. Brilliant, I have to say. Very well done.